Hey everybody, welcome to episode 14 of CCFR Radio on the Air. I'm your host, Rod Giltaca. Thanks for joining me again. Today on the show, we have another action-packed one. We're going to have Ms. Wilson on almost for the entire episode, but we've also got a special guest who is Bob Freeberg, Robert Freeberg of the Saskatchewan Firearms Office, to tell us about this new legislation that the province has rolled out and passed to protect gun owners from the feds. Also, an update on our Gunny Girls documentary coming up, as well the verdict on whether or not the Supreme Court of Canada is going to hear our case, CCFR versus Canada. All that and more, CCFR Radio starts right now.
CCFR Radio on the Air is brought to you by Wild TV Plus, the best hunting, fishing, and outdoor content available anywhere, anytime, on any device. Visit wildtvplus.ca.
All right, we are back, and all the way through, we're going to have Ms. Wilson from the CCFR. Wilson!
Hey, Giltaca, how you doing?
I'm okay,
back
man.
in my dungeon.
Yeah, you're back in the dungeon.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that
got it fixed.
I'm not saying you belong in there.
I do. I know it.
Anyway, get back down there. Okay, we got some stuff to cover here because we actually have an action-packed episode, as I mentioned in the intro, and a lot of stuff to talk about and a lengthy interview. So let's hammer these things out here in the first segment. First thing I want to talk about is the Gunny's Girl documentary. Our calendar. I talked about that, I don't know, last year before Christmas, and we're filming this documentary. We just never got it out because we got busy. There was an election and a bunch of other things going on, obviously. And we are going to get that documentary out. I had all this footage, and now I have given it over to a good friend of ours that does a bunch of media stuff, and they're going to finish editing it and create a beautiful documentary out of that. And it should be ready, I'm thinking, somewhere around 6 weeks from now. So just wanted to give everyone an update. It was taking a while to get an update or get it going, but that's what's happening.
Well, that's good. Sometimes you got to delegate and walk away. Yep.
Well, it's the only way it's going to get done because we are busy over here. All right. Next thing, National Range Day. Why don't you cover that?
Okay. So National Range Day is coming up June 6, 2026. You can find all the details at nationalrangeday.ca. But the point is, right now is when you should be talking to your fellow club members or your executive and getting your plans together for what you're going to do. I met with my club yesterday virtually. We hammered out some of the details. We've got stuff booked. We've got a call out for volunteers, and we're looking to get things rolling now. If you leave it, it makes a lot of work for whoever's organizing it. So get working on that now. If you've never planned one before, you can find some great tips once again at nationalrangeday.ca. But that's coming right around the bend. It'll be here before you know it. I know the weather doesn't feel like it, but it's coming. So yeah, get ready. National Range Day once again.
Awesome. And just a quick comment on that. It's that kind of stuff is really, really important work. So if you're holding a little ladies range day or an open house or a kids day or whatever, kids 22 day, you may not think that you're making a difference, but you absolutely are. So try to take part in that. Okay. So we heard from the Supreme Court. By the time you are all watching this, we already know whether or not the Supreme Court is going to take our case. So all you need to do is go to the CCFR's socials. So what would that be? That would be X, otherwise known as Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. We have an account there. You can find all the details on what the ruling was by the Supreme Court about whether or not they're going to hear our case and what other information they're going to release to us. But if you want to see that in a video form, see, I'm saying this before I actually do it, but because you guys are actually in the, for me in the future. So I'm recording, basically this ruling is coming out this Thursday. Today we're recording it, it's Monday. So I'll be recording a video as soon as I get the ruling, and then that will be circulated on all of our social media. So you'll see it in video form, watch that video, and you'll have all the details of whether or not we're going to be heading to the highest court in the land.
Very exciting. And if you're not on social media, don't worry. I'll get all of that stuff up on ccfr.ca.
Absolutely. We'll do a web story on that. Okay. We covered everything we needed to in the first segment. When we come back, we'll have Robert Freeberg, who is the commissioner of the Saskatchewan Firearms Office. So stay tuned. All right, we are back, and now I've got an esteemed guest from episodes past, Robert Freeberg, the Commissioner of the Saskatchewan Firearms Office. How's it going, Bob?
Very good. Yourself?
Awesome. Thanks for coming on again. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay, so we got a lot of stuff to cover, so we better get at it. So I'm thinking, if you can, in about 2 minutes, explain what Saskatchewan has done up to the point of this latest legislation, just so people can understand that you're building on something. So what happened before this latest legislation was passed?
Well, first of all, back in 2020, when we first started getting the news of the prohibitions with the OACs on the first tranche of firearms, the province decided to stand up its own provincial firearms office. So that's when I came on. Was they hired me in August of 2020. Then in September of 21, we took over the duties. And then we were running the CFO office, and my title at that time was CFO. We eventually, as more bans came in and we started working with our legal team, we brought in the Sask Firearms Act legislation, which was fairly complex and it covered a lot of areas, and I won't get into all of it, but for the point of your listeners, what it really did is it put a licensing requirement in place for seizure agents so that you couldn't just have anybody just showing up, picking up guns, or hauling them to a post office, or just destroying them without testing, and a variety of other things. And at the same time, we also put in some compensation provisions to make sure that people were getting compensated for their property. And again, the feds had kept saying that everyone was going to get paid. There was, no one should be losing value in their property. But of course, that changed as well. More guns were added to list. The cost got higher. I'm not sure if that was the reason, but the feds now started talking first come, first serve. So we've now put in amendments in place that it's not first come, first serve in Saskatchewan, it's all served. And at the same time, we've also put in some other legislation recently that we can talk about to allow that to happen past the amnesty in October.
Right. So you are obligated, the feds are obligated to actually pay for this stuff, full value, all kinds of, not just the guns themselves, other things too. We can cover that. And so that was put in place, and the seizure agent thing. So that was put in place, and now let's talk about the new legislation that was just introduced. And I think it's passed already, correct?
Correct, it did. Yeah, it was signed into law by the Lieutenant Governor last week.
All right. So what is this new legislation, and how does it help?
Well, a few things we've done. So we've built on our firearms valuation portal, which we're going to be opening up before the probably the mid to end of April. We'll be starting that up so people will be able to go online and register, so that they'll have a mechanism to go in and find out if their firearm is actually affected, because it's not as easy as just going on the federal portal. I mean, there's a lot of due diligence to see whether you're actually affected or not, and I know your program's covered that. And then the second side of it is that also providing for an evaluation. So we've signed on a contract with a professional evaluation team that's going to be able to put a value to these firearms that's licensed and does insurance claims and others to give us a realistic value for your property that we'll be providing you a certificate for. And then further to that, we've also put provisions in there under 11708. Originally, we were going to look at storing all of these firearms for our citizens, but at the same time, we have realized the cost and the complexity of that. So they're using the 11708 exemption. We're now allowing our stakeholders who are going to be pursuing compensation past October to be exempt from prosecution under the 11708 provisions of the criminal code. And then we've added in also some provisions around allowing health professionals some more flexibility to report concerns they have with respects to people who may be of harm to themselves or others because of a firearm situation, either applying for a license or currently have one, being able to report. And then the second side of this is also putting in some provisions around range inspections and the licensing of firearm safety instructors that goes a bit beyond what the feds are doing, but is effective and needed.
Okay, cool. So now, what this means in practicality, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, when the Saskatchewan government said, hey, we can hold on to these firearms for you if you want us to, as a service to, the residents of the province, that way you're not in possession of these newly prohibited firearms when the amnesty ends. That way you could potentially, let's say the federal government changed and you could potentially get your guns back and not have them destroyed or whatever, or taken from you without compensation. Now, it's almost the same strategy, except the government, the provincial government is using an authority that it has in is it the Firearms Act or the Criminal Code?
Criminal code.
In the Criminal Code, to appoint people to do things, to provide a service on behalf of the government. So you are now protected and you get to keep your own guns in your own home, right?
That's correct. And we are still going to offer some storage facility options for individuals because we have estates and so forth where, perhaps the executor is moving out of the home or eventually just does not want to have the responsibility of storing those firearms, but still deserves and should receive compensation. So we are still going to have some provisions available for that as well. But if someone's certainly able and capable and willing to store the firearms safely, as they have been doing since 2020 on many firearms, they'll continue to do that. And as long as they're not committing any type of criminal offense or doing something unforetold, they're certainly going to be eligible under the exemption. They won't provide any protection to them if they do something unforetold or create some kind of criminal or public safety issue.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Bob, we're out of time, but would you stay for a few more minutes in the next segment? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
All right. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Now, we've got Bob Freeberg for another couple of minutes. When you first came out with the legislation, the CCFR did an announcement. I, created a post. I'm typically on X, not on other social media platforms, but we have our social media on all these platforms. We put the news out and people are like, this isn't, I can't use my gun. And I want nothing less than a full repeal. And, it's difficult to fight with people like that, but I think we should just kick it around a little bit. Maybe there's a couple of problems. I think a lot of gun owners are frustrated. They don't like this, but they don't understand the difference of the provincial jurisdiction and the federal jurisdiction. They don't really understand the situation they're in. And it's causing them to react. And I would say negatively. Any commentary on that?
Well, I certainly understand people's frustrations. I mean, I'm one of the people that's affected by this, so I'm certainly not immune to its repercussions. But the thing we have to realize is it is federal legislation like income tax and many other things that there's only so much the province can do because it is criminal code. And again, what we need to do and bear in mind that using the 11708 exemption definitely needs to have a benefit to the province in order to be utilized under the legislation, in order to be used and be in compliance with what 1708 is specifying. Is there has to be a benefit on behalf of the province. The benefit, of course, is it's going to save us millions of dollars in storage and labor and staff and police resources and so forth to have to go out and gather these firearms to store them. So we certainly got a strong argument there that defends why we're using this particular piece of legislation, which we believe is there for a reason, and we're utilizing it for that reason. Unfortunately, with the use, again, some could argue that, me being able to go out and shoot it and enjoy it is a good use as well, but it's not necessarily a direct benefit to the government who's issuing the exemption. So again, we're utilizing the tools that we can, and again, hoping that the stakeholders either get compensated for their property, or as you say, maybe the feds choose not to pay for a while and the clock runs out and there's different policy, or they realize that the cost of doing this, because it's no longer first come, first serve, will become intense enough that they will actually look at some other option like grandfathering or something, or completely repealing this altogether.
Well, that would be nice. And the last thing I'll just add is this applies to handguns. This applies to all the different accessories and everything that you've invested in relation to these firearms when it comes to compensation, because these are a lot of these things would not be useful otherwise. So what Saskatchewan has done is more than any other province. And so while we all want a full repeal, yelling full repeal on the internet doesn't help that situation. And we just got to do everything that we can to get through this, and maybe we'll have a shot at changing it in the near future. We'll see. But I know a lot of people, I'm sort of speaking on your behalf now. I know a lot of people in your office put a tremendous amount of effort into doing this. And I'll tell you, I appreciate it personally.
Well, I also want to give our government credit. I mean, our government, from our premier down to our minister and cabinet, I mean, been very supportive and forthcoming with this legislation, and, as you know, put this through very quickly. So again, I think people need to also, as much as they may be frustrated, they also have to realize that they need to thank people for what they have accomplished. And the point of just saying, well, don't comply, and then the police show up at your door in November, December, because they don't care that the government's saying don't comply. They have a criminal code and obligation, they believe, to enforce the law. So again, I think having us use the law in a positive way, we're getting a lot of support from the opposition and police agencies in Saskatchewan. And I'd like to see the same coming from our stakeholders, which is our citizens and firearms owners.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much, Bob. And thank you to the Saskatchewan government for at least doing everything they possibly can. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so that was Bob Freeberg from the Saskatchewan Firearms Office, and he is the commissioner there. And yeah, they've done so much in Saskatchewan for gun owners. They are leading the charge, as it were, and I'd certainly like to see other provinces follow suit. Now, having said that, there's a way we can put a little pressure on them. Why don't you tell us all about it, Ms. Wilson?
Well, this happened the other day when all this news broke. People were like tagging, at Ford Nation and tagging in Doug Ford and some of the other premiers. And it got me to thinking, my intention is to reach out to each of the premiers in an official capacity. And I've been doing that. But it also helps to have a little bit of added pressure. So if you go to ccfr.ca, there's a web story there that I made called Dear Premier. And the idea behind it is I'm asking people to reach out to their premiers. Every province, aside from Quebec, has shown some opposition, either, huge opposition or a little bit to this gun grab. But they're more enticed into acting if they have more people reaching out to them and putting pressure on them. So the more they hear about something, the more apt they are to do something. So on that web story, you'll find a template letter. And I mean, I wrote it up as a reference. You can, of course, take it, use what you want out of it, make it your own, but send that off to your premier. There's a link there to find out all the contact info for every premier of every province. And of course, the draft of the legislation. So yeah, do it. Help me out. I need some help. Put some pressure on your premier.
Well, like I've said countless times, if everybody just does a little bit of work, you don't have to do all the work. You just have to do a little bit, but a lot of people doing it, then that makes a big difference. So here's an opportunity to just take 20 minutes out of your life and do something that might help. So that'd be great. I'd like to see all these provinces follow suit. So
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. We're out of time for this segment. When we come back, we got a couple more things to cover before we let you go. So we'll see you in a second. All right, we are back now. We've got about 4 minutes left with you, and we got a couple of things to go through with you before we let you go. The first thing is, I know we don't really talk about politics very much here on the show. I know that's facetious, but there's a little bit of political talk we need to cover, and it has to do with another floor crossing, but this time from the NDP to the Liberals, not the Conservatives. So why don't you give us a lowdown on that, Ms. Wilson?
That's right. Longtime Nunavut NDP MP Lori Idlut has crossed the floor after she said she wouldn't. Coincidentally, Carney also just announced that he's investing $40 billion in the North, which is a good policy, but I'm sure there's, one thing has nothing to do with the other. This does bring Carney one seat closer to his majority. Now, April 13th, we also have 3 different by-elections. Scarborough Southwest, Bill Blair's old riding, University of Rosedale, which belonged to Chrystia Freeland, and Terrebonne, which was a court actually decided to throw out the results of that election because it was just too close to call. So I think cobbling together a very weak majority government like this makes it more difficult for Carney to call a spring election, because the reason for an election would be to get a majority. And if he gets it through, backroom deals and this kind of patchwork process, it's makes it extremely difficult. However, I think he could come back to people in the fall and ask for a greater majority. So in any event, it's not great news, but I do think it's better to hold off having an election. I don't think we should have one this spring. So this is the solution.
Yeah. So there,
Yeah.
despite the fact that Carney is going to get his majority through deals, nobody knows what the terms of these deals are, but we can only imagine.
Yeah.
Even though that feels like a setback, which it is, of course. An election in the fall is still doable, even if you can consider the polls. So, Damian Kurek, he's the Conservative MP that gave up his seat for Pierre Poilievre in North Battleford, if memory serves me correctly in Alberta. And he had tweeted something, posted on X, and it was you actually, Ms. Wilson, that told me about it. And he had said the difference in the last election between the minority Liberal government that we got and a majority Conservative government was 40,000 votes. So if an election
That's
happens,
crazy.
do you think if we really put our back into, we all do a little bit of work, we can bring in another 50,000 votes in another
I
election?
think we can.
I think we can, right?
I think we can.
Yeah. So, I know it feels like we're a long way away from ever getting out from underneath these people, but it actually is possible if we just keep going. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of keeping going, the CCFR does a lot of work. We have a lot of work to do. And the way that we do that is for people to support us. And one way you can support us is to become a member of the CCFR. You get $5 million worth of insurance. The cost is $40 a year, 11 cents a day, actually just under 11 cents. So if you would consider becoming a member of the CCFR for $40 a year, that would really help us. And that would allow us to continue to do great work.
Yeah. And I mean, I get it. These are tough times, but just take a chance on us if you can. If you're in a position to do so, I would ask you to do that. If you're not, that's okay too. Keep sharing the content. But we're only able to do all the big things we do because we have big support. And if we want to go bigger and we want to get those 50,000 votes, we're going to need all hands on deck. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we covered everything. Until next time, Ms. Wilson, I appreciate the update, and we'll see you then.
We'll see you then.